观众朋友们，中华电视摄制组今天同墨尔本皇家理工大学亚洲语言系陈阳国生主任来到 Chris Smell 先生家里，拜访了他和他的夫人 Suzanne and 教授。这对夫妇对中华文化有着深厚的感情，对中澳两国文化的交流和发展做出了很多贡献。现在就请观众朋友同我们一起走进他们的家，听他们讲述他们和中华文化的故事。
To start with, perhaps you can tell me a bit more, which we haven't got time to touch. And how did you two first get in touch with, engage with Chinese culture?
Well, I became interested in Chinese culture from a very, very early age, from the age of about 5, when my family used to go for special occasions for a Chinese meal. We would do this maybe once a fortnight.
How did you find it?
I loved the Chinese food.
Okay.
The cuisine, was obvious to me that it was a wonderful variety and wonderful tastes, so aromatic, so beautiful. And we used to go to a restaurant that had a very distinctive Chinese decoration. And I acquired a love of the beauty of the intricate nature of Chinese art and yet the simplicity as well.
And Chris, what about your experience with from childhood?
Well, I suppose I can't really put them in order, but my earliest memories are to do with literature. And when I was about 10 years old, I started reading the Reader's Digest. And which was, you
wonderful
might
American
recall,
magazine.
an American magazine and very anti-communist. But one of the stories in the Reader's Digest was about the escape of Sun Yat-sen from the legation in London. And I found this a most amazing story because it suggested some vast complexity about Chinese society which I couldn't understand, and I became...
For a 10-year-old boy.
Yes, and I couldn't understand that, and
Yes.
He seemed to be the hero of the story, and yet he was the enemy of his government, and I couldn't understand that and became more interested.
How did kids take that at such a young age and to try to understand something very elite and a very, in a distance far?
Didn't seem distant, didn't seem far, didn't seem alien.
Because?
Well, we had a familiarity with China, and it was an interesting place, and as Chris said, I think the complexity of was very fascinating.
So the Chinese culture.
随着 Chris 和 Susan 不断加深的中国情结，他们已经不仅仅局限于对中国食物和文学的热爱，他们用更多的热情来收藏中华艺术品和中国传统的手工珍宝。
Where did you get this tea set, Susie?
Well, I bought this locally in our local Chinese grocery, as a matter of fact.
And it's
Just
life.
here in Melbourne.
Long life. Look at on the cup. It says 万寿无疆, meaning long life. Cheers.
Long life.
Long professional life.
long life and long friendship.
时下，中国和澳大利亚的关系十分紧密，但在 Chris 和 Susan 年轻的时候，当时处于世界冷战的环境下，中澳关系面对着一个僵滞的局面。
Of course, in 1962, the whole issue of Chinese history was tied up with political questions about Australia's relations with the communist government in China, and reading the history, I found it very difficult to understand why communism was a bad thing for China, and at that point of development, and this made me have a different point of view to most of the other boys in my class, and I was very lucky to have at school, not in the history class, but at school, a young man who was a couple of years older than me, from Hong Kong, who I'm still friendly with and still see all this time later. And his name's Eric Choi Young Sung. And I asked him about what do people in Hong Kong think about communist China, and he said it's very complicated, which is obviously right. And he said, but we are all proud. All Chinese are proud of what China is achieving. And that struck me as an amazing statement to be made by a 17 or 18-year-old. Yes.
We and our friends were all very interested in the politics in China and how it might be that communism might work in a country. And we found that fascinating. And what is especially what was always fascinating to me was that knowing that China had such a history in trade and in being the free enterprise country of the East, how that would fit with government control of industry.
The first thing that made me wonder when I read 3 different books about people who had travelled to China and also had a visit from a man who had travelled to China as part of an official delegation, they all seemed to go to exactly the same places, and they happened to meet by accident exactly the same people who told them exactly the same things about how good the revolution was and how bad life had been under the Kuomintang. And I started to wonder perhaps there was a bigger story to be told than the story even we were getting from travellers to China.
Rosheng, I'd like to show you this. I think you've seen it many times.
Always like it.
Yes, it's very lovely. Inside, and I'll just tip this up so that people can see, there's a carving in the middle of this glass orb, and it's a carving showing the dragon and the phoenix.
Yes.
And these are the 2 symbols of China, aren't they?
Yes. In Chinese culture, dragon and phoenix, we call it 龙凤呈祥. That is, when they come together, it brings happiness and joy to the family and to the nation.
How wonderful. And what I especially like about this piece is the way in which it seems to draw light to it and then radiate light. It really seems to me to be like the light of China.
广告过后，让我们继续听 Chris 和 Suzanne 讲述他们和中国不解情缘的故事。其中一段生日礼物的故事耐人寻味，同时他们的孩子也被这种对中国的热爱之情所感染。Chris 和 Suzanne 从10多年前就开始收藏这些中国艺术品。其中有一件艺术品可谓是他们的真爱。
I've always fascinated by this piece of art in your house, and all of friends came to your house. Love this. Can you tell us a bit more about the history of this beautiful piece of art?
Yeah, we call it a painting, but in fact I think it's a bas-relief casting, and it's made of a resinous material. Whether it's been cast in one piece or made in several pieces and put together, we don't know. But for many years it formed part of our lives in a restaurant that we went to near here called the Kingdom Chinese Restaurant. And then one day Suzanne happened to mention to the owner how much she liked it, and he, in effect, after some discussion, offered to sell it to her. But Suzanne came home on one birthday and discovered this sitting on top of the counter here, and she was somewhat surprised. Although she expected it, she didn't know it was going to be there when she walked through the door.
This is a Chinese brush painting made by our son Lucas, who learned Chinese painting from an early age. He would have completed this piece when he was about 6 or so. It actually shows flying dinosaurs, pterodactyls. He was fascinated by dinosaurs at that age. He moved on to paint many other things, including this beautiful camellia. You can see the fineness of his work. He would have been about 8 years old when he painted this.
整套房子都摆满了富含中国特色的艺术品，毫无疑问，我们每个人都可以感受到它们浓浓的中华情结。
They were in seventh heaven, weren't they?
Yes.
They loved it. They loved, I think, particularly the friendliness of the people, of just people that we would meet in the street. I mean, let alone the people who were greeting us and looking after us. The people we would meet in the street with whom we couldn't exchange language verbally, but the non-verbal communication was very strong, and the warmth of, I think this was the thing that really impressed them most, the warmth of the Chinese people.
When we took the children to China, I had a very bad moment at one time, and that was when we left to go to from Nanjing to Huangshan. We got up before the sun came up, and we got on a bus, and we were driving out through the suburbs of Nanjing with our 2 children.
Your husband actually put us on the bus.
Yes.
Qingping put us on the bus, and he gave us food to take on the bus, so we were all set to go.
And we were driving out through the dark suburbs, and I suddenly realised I had my 2 children and ourselves in a bus full of Chinese, none of whom could speak any English, and I literally did not know where we were going.
Paradise.
But we felt very safe, and when we arrived at our destination, all the luggage was taken out, travelling for a long time.
Yes.
Nobody spoke English, and we just stood there at the bus station high up in these remote mountains. We just stood there with our children
Were you worried?
and waited.
No.
Yeah.
And suddenly someone came up and said, "Hello, are you Chris Smale?"
In English, at
In
least.
English.
Yes.
And this was our guide who'd
Yes.
been
Waiting
for us. But what was remarkable was how comfortable we felt, not knowing where we were or what was happening.
他们整个家庭对中华食物、艺术乃至文化的热爱，使他们又开始踏上了神奇的中国之行。
This teacup actually always reminds me of the relationship between myself and Guoshang, because I bought this at the Great Wall of China on our first visit to China
When you were
when we were together, and I was told by the vendor that it was jade, and I asked the local expert Guoshang, "Is it jade?" And she gave me the perfect Chinese answer. She said, "It should be jade."
This beautiful beauty is for our sweet Rena, was it?
It could be, but I bought this actually in the Forbidden City last time I was in Beijing because it was so hot there and I needed something to cool me down.
Practical as well.
Very
Helped
practical.
you or saved
Very practical.
Yeah.
One of my favourite pieces is this piece of jade carving. In fact, it's two pieces, carved from two separate pieces of jade. And this was given by the Choi family. Remember I mentioned my school friend, Eric Choi. His parents gave this to my parents to thank them for the help that my parents gave to their son, Eric, in Australia. And it's one of our family's most treasured possessions. It was, in fact, I've been assured by Eric, it was in fact part of his own family's personal jade collection, which was passed to our family and now treasured by me as a reminder of my youth and of a long-lost Chinese brother and my interest and fascination with all things to do with China.
So it is also a symbol of the friendship of two generations between Australia and China.
Yes, indeed.
广告过后，接下来请您继续收看。您将看到这对夫妇对中国的未来的展望，以及他们对不同文化之间融合关系的理解，还有 Susan 带给我们的中国古诗的朗诵。欢迎回到中华电视。这期节目我们看到了 Chris 和 Suzanne 这对夫妇在他们大半辈子的生命中对中国深深的热爱之情。但是未来会怎么样？中国会更加西方化吗？西方世界会更加接受中国的现状吗？让我们和陈阳国生女士一起寻找答案。
So Chris, from our generation and our friendship, and becomes really close as family relationship, has been last for 27 years. It will go on. And what would you capture for the future development of the nation relationship and people relationship and family relationship between these two countries, China and Australia?
Well, I think that the most important thing that's going to happen over the next 20 years or so is that as China opens to the West and as more Westerners get to know China, the hidden history of the relationship and importance of China will start to emerge. Throughout our generation and our parents' generation, the role that China played in world history and civilization has been sort of covered up, and we trace our cultural roots back to Greece and to Babylonia and to Egypt. And at some point soon we're going to have to face the fact that it actually all started a bit further east. And that the real roots of the whole of modern civilization are, at least in part, to be found in China, and there has been a continuous, uninterrupted interplay between China and the rest of the world. It has suited governments of every kind at different parts of history to deny the reality of the interchange going on, but it has always been there, and when we recognise it, in some time, gradually in the future, it will make clear in a way that nothing else can that we all are just one human race.
I think everybody, well, most people in the educated people in the Western world now realise that international collaboration is critical if we're to have peace and if our planet is to survive. So we all have to work together, and the only way to work together is to work together. To work
at it.
Actually,
on a day-to-day basis.
One-on-one, on a day-to-day basis, at a very grassroots level.
The generation of ours went through the Cultural Revolution, which is denounced the history, denounced the culture of ancient times. And it was foreigners that they appreciated the old culture. That put us in a position of rethinking why. And after having a lot of cultural comparison since I came to work in Australia and now live in Australia, we have a lot better understanding and appreciation of Chinese culture, not only as the culture of that nation, but as the culture of the whole human society.
虽然时光在不停地流逝，历史记载中也有很多所谓的文化分歧，但是中国悠久历史留存下来的丰富的艺术珍品和文化宝库已经被世人所瞩目。Chris 和 Suzanne 的故事就是很好的例子。
Hi Chris, tell me about this ball you're holding in your hands.
Well, this is one of the simplest pieces we own and one of my favourite, which we bought in Nanjing at the Friendship Store on our first visit to Nanjing together. And why I like this piece is not just because of the beautiful artwork and the beautiful shape, but it reminds me of the age of Chinese civilization, because when we were in Hangzhou, we went to the museum in the old Imperial Library, and there was exhibits showing that there is pieces of wood from China with lacquer on them from 6000 BC.
同时 Suzanne 喜爱的中国艺术形式还有很多，其中中国传统的古诗就是她小小的爱好。
Liu Xi was a painter and a poet, and I think in this poem he captures something that's present in so many of the classical Chinese paintings and poems, something of the importance of the resonance between the human soul and all of nature. Between the mountain walls, a waterfall is falling, like a snowy string as if from the sky. Beyond the heavens, the cave of the distant cloudy peaks is clear and bright. One often hears a clear and distinct chanting voice echoing in the forested ravine. In the midst of the green cliffs, one suspects there is someone contemplating.
Chris, what about your, future, ongoing connections with Chinese culture?
Well, I'm most interested in the development of law in China, and the tension there is between the need, on the one hand, for Chinese authorities to maintain a degree of social order, and given the complexities of economic and social life in China, that leads to problems that we find difficult to understand here in Australia. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there's a very strong need in China, as China opens to the world, to develop a commercial legal system much more like the one in the West, so that companies and individuals doing business in China and with China will feel secure and comfortable in that their bargains will be honoured in the way they understand them, and that their rights that they've bargained for will be honoured in a way that they can understand in advance.
Bye bye.
以上您收看到的就是我们这一期的节目，感谢您的观赏。下期节目我们将向您介绍岭南画会优美的水墨画，我们的摄像机将带您走进这些著名的岭南画派艺术家的世界。 我们今天来到了澳大利亚维多利亚艺术委员会，为您做现场报道。今天呢，在这儿呢有一个特殊的展览，就是澳洲岭南画会会员展。在展览上呢，我们不仅可以欣赏到林老师的作品，同时呢，我们也领略到他的学生的精彩之作。在这些作品当中呢，不仅包含了他们的心血，同时也蕴含了他们浓浓的中华情。
中华电视这期向您介绍岭南画会会员作品展。这次展览得到了很多朋友和嘉宾的支持。
I'd like to give you some background to this exhibition. The Lingnan School emerged as an artistic movement in the 1900s in Guangdong, China. And this exhibition includes paintings by the fourth generation Lingnan students over 100 years later and on a different continent. The Australian Lingnan Chinese Art Association was founded in 1992 by international artist Mr. Patrick Lam, who has taught a large number of students in Melbourne for 3 decades. And it is with great pleasure that I invite our first speaker for his opening address. Please welcome the MLA for Burwood, Mr. Graham Watt, representing Ted Value.
Ni hao. This exhibition shows our great cohesive society where a style of painting, the Lingnan style, is adapted by the wider community. What fascinates me is how this transcends from the ancient world of the Middle Kingdom to the contemporary. This is exemplified in all its glory by the painting of the koala on the front cover of the book by none other than Patrick Lam. I'd like to congratulate Patrick for his contribution to what can best be described as a continuation of strong art and cultural exchanges between our two great societies. I hope that many people from all over Melbourne can visit this showcase of the style of art from the Lingnan School and learn about its history. I know the Premier, is, in his capacity as Arts Minister, is also has a special appreciation for art, and he's asked me to express his heartfelt wishes tonight and sends his deepest apologies. Thank you for the opportunity. 谢谢.
On behalf of the Consulate General of the People's Republic of China, to extend our warm congratulations to Lingnan Chinese Art Association for this wonderful exhibition. Actually, it's my second time to come here to attend an art exhibition like this. I think I'm very impressed by the big progress the members have made so far. And from the paintings, I realized they have not only grasped the spirit of Lingnan style of painting, they have also reflected the beauties of both Chinese culture and Australian culture. From their paintings, I can see both animals and the flowers and the mountains and the rivers from China and Australia, which is really great. I think you have made great contribution to the multicultural profile of the city of Melbourne. Congratulations to all of you. And I think second, I would like to pay my respect to Mr. Patrick Lim for his dedication and efforts to promote Lingnan style of painting, for his passion for this art education. I think ever after he came to Australia in 1979, has started teaching Lingnan style of painting, and by this time I've heard that he has already got like 3,000 students. I think we should all give him a big applause for that. He's been taking artists to China to have like kind of exchange program with Chinese artists. And when I look at these paintings tonight, I found